Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Angelique. It's so good to see you guys again. Man, I had a power pack month last month with all kinds of guests, and it was just a phenomenal month. And this month, I decided to do something quite a bit differently, like way different than I've ever done. And I hope that this really works out because I'd like to do it again with another book. Anyway, what's up, y'all? Angelique here for another episode of Silent No More. That's my weekly podcast, which is designed to bring more awareness about domestic violence, not just awareness, action through my words, through what I should pray. Nothing more than this is a podcast that helps people to break free, to find that courage to break free and that strength to stay out, which is something that is really, really important to me. As you guys know, I am a survivor of domestic violence. And so when I sit here and I talk about DV and I talk about all the, or even this book we're going to do, this stuff is not foreign to me. It was my life, unfortunately. But thank God I can use the phrase was, three letters that make a huge difference. So anyway, what's going on, all my courageous kings, my courageous queens? Yet another episode of Silent No More. This is actually episode number 13. God, I am just so grateful. I am so grateful that this has been going on the way it has, and you guys have been watching, and it's just been phenomenal. So I appreciate you. Again, Angelique Pierce, I am a survivor of domestic violence. I am also an advocate of freedom and truth, and I am the founder of Ladder Masters Inspirational Leadership Group, better known as Ladder Masters. Now, I created Ladder Masters for three very specific purposes. I tell this every week because I don't want you to be confused for any reason why I'm here. So, number one is to bring awareness. In relation to this, domestic violence, I do talk about leadership and other things, but I'm bringing awareness to domestic violence because I have come to the conclusion that even for myself, I had no clue. I had no context, abuse, domestic violence. Like I didn't have a clear definition in my mind of what it was, what it really is. And so I'm here to bring awareness. Number two, to break down facades because truth, there are a lot of information that's correct, that just is not accurate at all. So I want to build conquerors because out of a situation of domestic violence, when men who suffer abuse, they feel very lives have no real meaning. And what do I do now after all of this? And I want to be clear, you are still a conqueror. In spite of what you've been through, you are still a conqueror. All right. Thank you for tuning in. This is my first installation of a week book discussion series. It is the book that I cannot put down. I can't put it down. It's titled Surviving Violence. You see, I still got my little mark in here. Surviving Domestic Violence, Voices of Women Who Broke Free. And it's by Dr. Elaine Weiss. I believe it's Weiss. I hope it's Weiss. I'm a names person. If it's Weiss, hopefully it's Dr. Elaine Weiss. But it's my podcast. Listen, while we're getting ready, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Please do at this moment, share it, tag somebody. Listen, I told y'all on my post for this podcast, I know that most of us, just about know someone who's been through domestic violence or they're going through it right now. I am just convinced of that. So tag a group, tag a person, tag your cousin, auntie, sister, brother, niece, nephew, godchild, if you want to. Share this group, share it anywhere, but let's get this thing going because it's such an important message. All right, so I'm excited to be here. Again, I am really here to review a book, and we're going to spend the next 4 weeks doing that because there's so much. But before I get too far, I do want to say a quick prayer. I do this every week. It is important for me to do that because I want to make sure I do invite God's presence here, his Holy Spirit here, because I want to say the things that make the most sense, that matter to the audience, the victims and survivors who are looking for answers, direction. And to be quite honest, I remember just looking for clarity. Like I just needed clarity. So before I go any further, let me say this quick prayer. Father, I just come before you, thanking you for this day, thanking you for this evening, this hour, this time I have with anyone and everyone who will watch this podcast tonight live, or who in fact will watch the recording later. God, I just ask that you give me the words to speak, but let me always speak truth, speak truth. Let me always be real, raw, and honest. And let me always, whoever is listening, to a greater place of strength, courage, and Father, growth. So, right now, for every victim, every survivor, I pray again that you are free from abuse, that you live a life of liberty because you have to live a life. Trust me, I know. So, for every survivor, every victim who will listen or who is watching right now, I pray for your strength to stay out, your courage to get out. Those two things are so important, courage and strength. But I thank you for all these things in Jesus' name. All right. Let's do it, y'all. Let's get started because I'm excited. When I tell you that this book is giving me so much life, like I'm reading it, I'm like, oh my God, like, yes, yes, thank you. So again, I am just so grateful that I have the chance to do. I do want to give one more minute because you guys know I tell you every week, I'm a part of a podcast group. I'm not just here out here doing it by myself. I'm part of a family, a podcast network, which is the UB Podcast Network, which is part of Unique Blessings, an organization that focuses on human trafficking, domestic violence, especially sexual assault, especially for teens and at-risk youth. That's a key thing. And I just want to shout out the Unique Blessings family because that's my family, y'all. Especially everybody knows her as Queen Unique. Jacob, he's out there. He does a podcast too. I am so grateful for this family. So I'm going to get going. But again, before I get down to it, if you haven't yet done it, do me a favor. Hit that share button. Do it right now. It's like somewhere there. Hit that button and share this podcast because I want people to join. This is a message you shouldn't miss, a message you should not miss. And I tell you all the time, I prepare, right? I prepare for y'all. This isn't some off the cuff. I could do it off the cuff because I do it off the cuff. I rather prepare and make sure I really give you the messages that you absolutely need to hear. So here I am. If you haven't hit that share button, hit it. If you haven't tag somebody in this broadcast, tag a couple bodies because I'm about to get started and I want as much as possible. All right. So here we go. Surviving Domestic Violence, Voices of Women Who Broke Free. This was written by Dr. Elaine Weiss, and it is a phenomenal book to read. Now, I'm going to read something off the back of the book. You know how there's like real nice messages on the backside. I'm going to read something to you that stood out to me because I just can't let it go out of my mind because of what I hear people say. You know, I told you reasons of being here is to break facades. You ready for this? I'm going to start one right here. This is what it says on the back of the book. This was actually a review. And it says, Weiss finds that breaking isolation is the key to leaving. Only, you ready? She calls it escaping. Leaving, she says, is what you do when a movie is over. Leaving is what you do when a movie is over. When we're talking about abuse, we're talking about escaping. Escaping takes enormous courage. Are y'all hearing me? She said she calls it escaping because leaving is what you do when the movie is over. You get up and you leave. An abusive situation, which people say, why didn't she leave? Why didn't she just leave? She needs to just leave. Y'all wait, I'm gonna touch that one in just a second because that was a part of my situation. Why don't she just leave? No, you're missing it. Leaving is what you do when the movie's over. Escaping is what you do when you get away from an abuser. And escaping takes enormous, not a little bit, not a little taste, not a piece. It takes enormous courage. So I just want to set the stage with that because I told y'all when I come here, I've got some real to talk about. And I thank Dr. Weiss for providing this platform to be able to even do it in this way. All right. So it's centered on the stories of 12 women who survived abuse. Very intriguing to me. Great stories. Abuse, I'm going to name a few of these women. Abused women look like Jesusa Fox. She was a devout Catholic. She was married to an ex-Marine. Book, okay? She was married to an ex-Marine who, in order to escape, she had to leave her 2 sons behind. That's one of the women. Abused women look like Judy North, a first grade teacher who was abused by her husband for 10 years until she finally stood up to him in a fight that landed her in the emergency room. I'm actually going to spend the most time on her story because that one has got a lot of good nuggets in it. Abused women look like Whitney Benson, a Mormon college student who abhors the scar piece from her ex-boyfriend's class ring. That tells you a lot of what was happening in that situation. They look like Andrea Hartley, a pediatrician who married a man who became extremely violent just 4 months into their marriage. This stuff is real, y'all. It really does happen. Abused women look like me. Angelique was Angelique D's, got married, became Angelique Pierce, a girl from Philly. Y'all know I talk about my Northeast roots because they come out sometimes. They really do. A girl from Philly who used education to escape the struggles in the hood. We went through a lot, y'all. We saw a lot of poverty. We saw a lot of hard times. We did. But I used education. I went ahead and I earned a double master's degree. I became a corporate climber to end up marrying a man who not only abused me, but tried to break me and drain me of everything I had worked so hard to acquire and accomplish. Tried to put me back. He did. He tried to put me right back in the struggle financially, but also mentally. He tried to break me. But I say he almost did it. He almost did it. But y'all know that singer Brandy? Oh, I love Brandy. I still love Brandy. She's got a voice. I should listen to her, but she has a song, and the song is called Almost Doesn't Count. Almost doesn't count. He almost, but almost doesn't count because I'm right here. I'm still standing and I'm still strong. And I'm right here talking to y'all tonight. So we're going to keep going. Almost doesn't count. So let me jump into this amazing book. I mentioned a few of the character women in the book who have been through the abuse, but I am going to really dig into some of these key discussion points. In the introduction, tonight I'm covering introduction and chapter 1, or she calls it section 1. In the introduction, there's a key point that's made. And the point here is that domestic abuse doesn't just happen out there somewhere. It doesn't just happen out there somewhere. It happens to people you know and that you see in your town, that you meet at the grocery store, that's at the library, goes to the same hospitals and doctors and dentists that you do. It happens all the time in a variety of places to people that you know. It happens to your coworkers, the people that sit in the cubicle a couple rows down from you. Yep, it's happening or it has happened. So it happened to me, and that's why I share my story through this podcast. I share through this podcast because I know that people don't necessarily want to talk about this painful, almost secret thing, this what seems to be embarrassing or shameful. Believe me, I've been there. I know that feeling. But what I learned is it wasn't my fault. I didn't choose to marry somebody who I believed would abuse me. That was never the plan. Why would I do that? Why would I choose to marry someone? You don't. I didn't. Let's put it that way. I did not. So when I talk about this, it's because I never want, as many women and men, because men go through it too, as many women as men and men as possible to never, ever, ever experience it. It is, there's no one word that can encompass what domestic violence does to a person when you've gone through it. So it's time for all of us to open our eyes and open our ears and do something about this crazy thing where the statistics are off the hook with the number of people who go through this. They are off the hook. So I share my story. And the question here, that's my part that I can play. The question I have for you is, what part will you play? I know what part Dr. Weiss has decided to play. I know what part I'm playing. The question is, what part will you play? How will you help? How will you open people's minds and eyes and ears to something that's just so pervasive? Domestic violence is a monster. It is absolutely a monster. So I urge you, think about that. So you're joining me on the podcast, so that's a big step. Let's time out. Let me give you that credit. Let me give you that. you are joining me on this podcast, and that alone is a big deal. All right, so that's my challenge. That's my call to action to you. What more? What additional role do you play? All right, let's get into it. Whoo! Oh my goodness. If you haven't, I'm gonna tell you one more time. Stop, take a moment, share this, tag somebody, tag somebody in this if you have not yet. I'm looking for your comments. I know you guys are out there. I see some of you on for your comments, so feel free to drop them in and I will make sure to show them on the screen. I appreciate you for being here. All right, key discussion points. Let's talk about the prologue or the introduction. The author says, book taught her that stories can be gifts. G-I-S. I totally agree. Let me keep going. She says, here's the thing. Any story imposes a burden on the, y'all listening? It requires something for you to listen. Stories demand as much as they give. You are integral every week that you come back, every time you watch a recording. All of these things, they are integral to the storytelling process. You are, because you're listening, and that is active. Listening to stories is not passive. It's not a passive act. The story. And so the story lives on. Are y'all hearing me? That's my way of saying thank you. My thank you. Because you really could be doing 7:18, right? 7:18 on a Sunday night. You could be anywhere doing anything else. You're right here. And I appreciate you so much. All right. Here's the thing. Through stories, we are all connected. This is what the author saying. Through the stories of these women, through my story, through your story, we are all connected. And to achieve that connection, women who have survived must tell their stories. And not just tell them, she says, but tell them again and again. And we must hear them. People must listen. We must hear them more and more every time it's day. And we find the meaning within them. I so agree. Telling my story isn't because I want it to be something that's like, oh, did y'all hear about what happened? Oh my goodness, girl, I know you. Not that kind of story. Not the tea. We're not just spilling the tea. This is real talk, y'all. This is life-changing, life-altering, life-deciding type stuff. So that's why I tell my story. That's why I talk. I'm gonna keep going. But I want to be clear about one, so does the author. She says their stories are not stories of frailty. They're not stories of weakness. They are stories of clarity, resourcefulness, and strength. Let's be clear. So let me back up. In 1997, Dr. Weiss, she says she set out to gather a particular set of these stories. She literally traveled across the country interviewing women. Like she said, I'm going to go find these women. I'm going to go do it. Who were once in abusive relationships, left their abuser, and who went on to, as she called, reconstruct their lives. Oh, how I know that. That word reconstruct, absolutely. So the crazy thing, y'all, is that Dr. Weiss talks about how it was just far too easy to find these women. It was too easy. She said, I met them everywhere. She said she met them on airplanes, at conferences, at the community board meetings, at religious services. Y'all know my story got some religion to it. The church situation I went through. Yeah, absolutely. She says she found them in offices, at schools, at hospitals. They were way too easy to find. Why is that? Because statistics tell us that 1 in 4 women have experienced abuse in her lifetime. God, y'all. I told y'all before, I want you to stop one day when you're at work, right? Just like stop, or at church or wherever you worship, and just go, 1, 2, 3, 4. Ooh, she has probably been abused. 1, 2, 3, 4. Work. She's likely been abused. If I was at your job or I worked with you, you would have went 1, 2, 3, 4, saw me and been like, ain't no daggone way, not Angelique. Never. Impossible. But yep, 1, 2, Angelique. Absolutely. There's way too many of them, and it's way too easy to find us. All right. So she talks about breaking free from abuse. And this is something I put on my flyer for this. This is the prologue, is page 3. She says, breaking free from abuse is not simply a matter of walking out the door. Leaving is always a process. Do y'all hear me? I'm just checking my phone to make sure I ain't got no messages from somebody. All right. She said, breaking free from abuse is not simply a matter of walking out the door. Again, this isn't like a movie when it ends. Leaving is always a process. Escaping is a process that you have to do safely. All right. In the introduction of the book, Dr. Weiss introduces this very powerful concept that I have to share with you. She says, she calls it a pain of abuse. She talks about domestic violence and abuse as being a campaign. Oh gosh, I'm so glad that she brought up this point, because people tend to think of abusers in a very different light than they really should. Really should. So, page 7. Many stories focused on, instead of the subtle campaign of abuse, this is her comment, wearying and corrosive, which trapped their teller in a web of daily threat. What's the point here? Subtle. It's not something that, oh gosh, I just accidentally did this to this person. I just accidentally. Nope. It's a campaign. It's wearying. It's corrosive. And it traps the victim in this terrible web of daily threats to their lives, literally physical life, to their mental, psychological, emotional. It's amazing how it is. So, regarding one of the women, she actually wrote this. She said, I worry about the scars on her soul from carefully crafted campaign. Are you listening? That word campaign comes up a few times in the book. She says she worries about the scars on her soul from his carefully crafted campaign of criticism, intimidation, and punishing rape. The particular victim went through rape. That was a part of her abuse. I want y'all to understand, in domestic violence, I know the pictures that you see. I know the images that are typically shown. They typically show a woman with a black eye or some kind of busted area, and those things are real. That is death. Physical abuse is absolutely a terrifying, terrible part of domestic violence. But I want you to be very clear that even sexual abuse from husbands, boyfriends, these intimate partners, as well. And it gets called out in this book. All right. So here she says, page 8, what these women have in common is an aftermath. Like the grass that springs back after mowing, the feelings of shame, self-blame, helplessness, and blind fury appear, sometimes as nightmares. Y'all, I had, gosh, like when I think back to when I first got out of my situation, I had a really, really rough. I did it, right? I got my protection order. And I swear people think it just ends right there. Like, oh, you got them, right? First of all, they tell you, why don't you just leave, right? Why don't you just leave? I can't stand that phrase. Just leave. Oh my God, oh my gosh. But anyway, when you do just leave, when you do escape, because that's what you're doing, when you do escape, there's so much afterward. There's so much to follow. People don't get it. And your mind is so warped from what happened, y'all. I literally physically got sick. Are you listening to me? I physically got sick when I got away from my abuser, my ex-husband. Physically ill, vomiting, diarrhea, all of it. I was sick. I had those nightmares. I could not sleep. My anxiety level was so high. I could only sleep for like 3, maybe 4 hours. And then my mind would be tossing and turning, thinking he was there. All kinds of stuff was going on. It was terrible. So understand, all these things reappear. A woman who has been battered is never the same. These are her words. Thank you, doctor. A woman who has been battered is never the same woman who she was before it happened. You're never the same. Her history becomes woven into the fabric of her being. Are you listening to these words? This woman can write. Into the fabric of her being. What these women have in common is their determination to reconstruct their lives. I had that same determination. And I want to pass that same fire. I want to pass that same fire on to you. If you are a victim or you are a survivor, I want you to be determined to reconstruct your life, because it is possible. You're looking at someone who did it. I even got, look, I got cute for y'all today. I was determined to reconstruct my life and get back to the person who I truly am and even go past that person. All right. So many women escape abusive partners. Often it takes years, but those who do not leave are less courageous. Please just hold on. It takes time. It's not simple. It is quite a process. All right. So here's the key point I want to talk about. This is on page 9. Any woman in an abusive relationship, whether she has remained or to get free, let me sit up straight for this one. Let me just sit up. Any woman in an abusive relationship, whether she has remained or managed to get free, is a strong woman. I'm reading the words from her passages. She had to be strong to survive the daily assault on her character and her human dignity. That takes strength. It is so hard because people immediately think, well, why don't she just leave? Why is she letting this in? You immediately think weakness, whatever those words are that come to people's minds. I understand why people think that, because I thought people would think that about me if they knew I was being abused at home. I understand it. I understand it. But I want you to be clear. Don't call it weakness. It takes strength to survive. It takes courage and strength to get out and stay out. This is no easy task. This isn't something that you just wake up one day and decide, I'm going to fix it. First of all, you didn't wake up one day and get in it. It is a process that you barely knew. I barely knew I was even in something. I didn't understand it. So I just want to drop that little nugget. I just want to drop that little nugget. All right. But somehow we reached a turning point and knew that I actually did have the strength and in fact always had it, the power to break free. At some turning point, something happens and helped them book myself to realize I actually do have the power to break free. And we all do. And I did. Thank God for me and for my baby. Thank God. I'm so grateful. All right. There's a passage in here about this. She says, one of the women says, I worried that friends and colleagues who knew me as a strong, self-assured woman would think less of me. Let me tell y'all something. I talk a lot about my job, right? And I love my job and I love the company I work for. I will tell you, it was darn hard for me because I was concerned that if I showed up and I let people know that this was happening to me at home, here's my work life, here's my home life. But if somebody found out what my home life really was, I was concerned that I would not be perceived the same. I am looking and I don't see comments yet. So I hope y'all out there, whoever's watching right now, I want you to just put a comment in because I'm not seeing comments, but I know y'all out there. I've seen people come in and come out. But anyway, I was worried. And colleagues who knew me as this strong, self-assured woman would think less of me. I was. But you know what? I learned a lot later. Honestly, people were concerned. They wanted to help, but they don't know what's really going on. So they can't. All right. Here's section 1. I've been waiting to get here. The section is titled, Why Don't They Just Leave? All right. Let's get into it. All right. Section 1. This is on page 21. I know that they abuse, not out of this one. Let me just rewind for a second. This is an area where I will tell you I did not agree with the author. Powerfully written, but I did not agree with her, and I'm gonna get to why. The statement in the book is, I know that they abuse, not out of anger, true, not out of anger, but she says, out of a desperate need to control. Okay, let me keep reading. I know that they can't just stop. This is where I got like, you know, the infamous eyebrow raise. I know that they can't just stop, that they need professional help. And I sympathize, just as I sympathize with drug addicts. Okay. Let me break this down and kind of give my perspective on this because this is important. I don't agree. I don't agree that they can't just stop because I believe abuse is a choice. It is a choice. Every single day the abuser abuses, he or she is making a choice to do what they're doing, and it is very calculated. So I'm going to get into that because I there's two things going on in the book. The author, on one hand, says she doesn't believe they can just stop and that they need professional help. But on the other hand, she says things like this, page 26. I never once realized I was an abused woman. I never understood that every one of his actions was part of a carefully orchestrated campaign to hurt me. And just to be clear, the writer of the book was a domestic violence survivor. So her story is in here as well. So I never understood that every one of his actions was part of a carefully orchestrated campaign to hurt me. Carefully orchestrated campaign. Yet it says, I know that they can't just stop. No. I'm not feeling that. I'll keep going. Page 27, she says, he shaped his insults with surgical precision. He shaped his insults with surgical precision, knowing precisely which words would make me doubt my own perceptions. Okay, so now we've got a carefully orchestrated campaign, and we've got insults with surgical precision, knowing precisely which words to say. I'm sorry, that doesn't come across to me. Can't stop. That doesn't, not at all. So I'm gonna keep going because I got some things to say because I want to say this, and let me assure you, because she said I sympathize with them, and let me assure you that I don't sympathize with abusers at all. I don't sympathize with abusers at all. Let me just go for broke because this is what I want to say right now. They don't, me speaking, my podcast, I got some things I want to say. Let me say that they don't deserve sympathy. They don't deserve sympathy. That's my opinion. But I can tell you what they do deserve. Let me just go on a little rampage right now because this is what I really feel. But I'm gonna come back around and keep it cool in a second. They don't deserve sympathy, but I can tell you what they do deserve. They deserve to be locked under a jail. That's what they deserve. Because it's a campaign and it's carefully crafted with surgical precision. Okay? They deserve to get their asses beat by every person they ever abused. My opinion, my podcast. Y'all hear me? Hear me? They deserve dragged naked behind a speeding car. That's what they deserve. That's what they deserve. But we all know people don't get exactly what they deserve. So let me back up a step. Let me talk about why I don't do sympathy with people who commit domestic violence. Let me be very clear about it. The reason why I don't sympathize is because of the very definition of domestic violence. That's why. According to the National Coalition Against Domestic domestic violence willful, WILLFUL, the willful intimidation, meaning I am choosing. Willful intimidation, physical assault, battery, sexual assault, and or any other abusive behavior as part of, are you listening, a systematic pattern of power and control. It's a systematic pattern of power and control. This isn't like, oops, one day I woke up and accidentally abused you. It's a pattern, it's systematic, it's power and control, and it is perpetrated on purpose by one intimate partner against the other. It includes physical violence, sexual violence, threats, economic, emotional, and psychological abuse, and so much more that this definition does not cover, but it gets to the point. So, hey, nah, I don't sympathize. I don't empathize. None of that. You're abusing women, women who are abusing men. You get no sympathy. What you should get, I just told you, locked under the jail, your ass beat by every person you ever abused, and take it behind a car. You should get all that. However, people don't get what they deserve. And in the big picture of things, what I want is for these victims and survivors to get far away, to take care of themselves, and to never, ever face or be in that situation, to get to a place where you recognize these signs, the flags, the yellow and the red, where you recognize them, because it's so important that you do. All right. So when I talk about domestic violence and abuse, it's intentional. whether it's an action or an action, because that's a part of it, a withdrawing, that kind of abuse, that psychological or emotional abuse, the withdrawing, to gain and maintain, it is done for a purpose. To gain and maintain power and control over someone else in an intimate relationship. It's all power control. I don't sympathize. I don't, and I won't. But what I will do is be a beacon of light and tell the truth. And a person that talks about freedom, advocates freedom and truth, so that people like me and you and whoever else sees this will never go through it, or as soon as you recognize it, you can get out safely. All right, let's keep going. I want to be clear. The behavior of abusers is calculated. Don't mince words, y'all. Don't mince words. Don't make excuses. I did that. I believe I did that. I made excuses for what was happening because I didn't fully understand. It's calculated. It's a choice. They are not crazy. They are not sick, and they are certainly not confused, nor are they angry. They are not angry with you. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter how good you make that dinner or how terrible it tastes. It doesn't matter how much sex you give or how you don't. Abusers are going to abuse because it's a game. It's manipulation. It's power and control. Period. End of story. We make excuses. I don't sympathize. All right, let's keep going. So I told you the author herself is a survivor of domestic violence. I appreciate her book so much, and I appreciate her story. She talks about how within a week of her marriage to her college sweetheart, y'all, this dude courted her for like 2 years. Okay, her college sweetheart. I'm going to talk about her story a little bit more over the next couple minutes. She gets into this insightful conversation with the reader. She really does, about the reasons why she didn't leave, why she didn't understand, why all these things, and it's so good. So here are a few of the reasons that she talks about in her situation as to why she didn't. You know that word, just leave? I can't stand it. Why she didn't just leave? All right, page 21. She said, I didn't leave because, and she a few times, because abuse wasn't supposed to happen like supposed to happen to women like me. Ooh, don't I know that story well? She says domestic violence didn't happen to nice middle-class girls from the suburbs. That's page 21. She says, page 22, so when the abuse started on my honeymoon, y'all listening? This dude courted her for like like the real courting that we talk about, the real version of dating. He courted her. And then the abuse started on her honeymoon. Like he played the game. These dudes play the long game. It's unbelievable. But anyway, she said, so when the abuse started on her honeymoon, she had absolutely no way to frame what was going on. She had no place in her mind for what she was experiencing. I know that place so well. What she's saying is, I didn't have a definition of domestic abuse in my life, in my mind. She didn't know what to do with it. I didn't have that definition either. When it started happening to me, I was like, gosh, we seem to be arguing a lot. Like, these are really bad arguments. Maybe I'm the cause. I gotta figure out what I can do better, because earlier it was amazing. I told you guys in the beginning, he was amazing with the spirit fingers. He was amazing. I didn't date someone and think, oh yeah, he's about to abuse me. Oh, he about to break me down completely. I'm good with that. That never happened. Can I just tell? Never, because that's not who I am. So that's not what I wanted for my life. So keep going. She had no way to frame what was going on. Page 22, she says, I didn't leave. Here's her second I didn't leave. I didn't leave because I believed I could fix it. Oh, I know I'm into somebody who's listening right now who's same exact mentality. I believed I could fix it. Here's the deal. She said on page 22, her ex-husband courted her, I told y'all, for 2 years, and he was amazing to her. He was tender. He was affectionate. I know all of this. Like, I was like, do we know each other? Like, have we met, Dr. Weiss? Like, did we go to school together? Of course not. But that's how I felt. That's how I felt. She said on page 22, she said, rational people, because he appeared to be rational. She courted him for 2 years. It was her college sweetheart. Rational people don't suddenly turn violent for no reason. Her words, right? So I must be giving him a reason. Let me see what I can do to stop giving him a reason. That was what she thought. I know, I know that place. Maybe I am really frustrating him, or maybe I am doing something wrong. My God, y'all. I felt like I was talking to her and we were talking to each other. She said, no, third reason, page 23. I didn't leave because for a while I began to believe what he kept telling me, that I was overreacting. So I'm going to put a little pin right there, because a part of the abuse strategy is to make you think you are something's wrong with you, like you get you to the point where the gaslighting, where you like that that happened, but maybe it didn't happen. Gaslighting. I saw that, but maybe I didn't see. He did this, but he didn't really mean it that way. Like you're puzzled. You are very confused by what's going on. So page 23, she said yes, he light in pointing out an obese woman. You listening? Here's her story. She said her ex-husband would delight in pointing out an obese woman on the street and saying, "See her ass? Yours is even bigger." But perhaps she said, wow, I did need to lose weight, but guess what? She also notes in the book that she was 107 pounds. 107. Believe me, her behind was not that big, and especially to compare it to an obese woman. But look, that's a tearing down. That's a man, gosh, like maybe there is something wrong with me. Like maybe I am the wrong size. All right, page 23. She said, yes, he would. This is the author. Yes, he would occasionally put a pillow over my face. This part I was like, oh my God, oh my gosh. He would occasionally put a pillow over while I slept. Okay, so that was like attempted murder, but we're gonna keep going. He would occasionally put a pillow over my face while I slept, watching with detached interest as I woke up gasping for breath. So he would pretend like, hey, what happened? But the next morning, he always acted as if nothing happened. So I had to be imagining it, right? This is her. She said, I had to be imagining it, right? That gaslighting thing is real. These assaults on your mind and your oh, but they're so intense. Page 23. She said, this is her next reason. I didn't leave because there was nowhere to go for support. Check this out. Check this out. She said, she was Jewish. She said, I is Jewish. She said, I never confided in a rabbi because she had been raised to believe, and she still believed, that Jewish men are not wife beaters, that my husband was the sole exception. Something's going on here. It's just him. Men don't do this. Something's going on in my house. It's something in my house that's causing this issue. Page 23. She said, I had no obvious scars or bruises. She said, my eyes were not blackened. My ribs were not broken. My jaw was not shattered. That's my story, y'all. Oh, he was creepy. Very. He did not punch me in my face. He didn't break my jaw. My nose wasn't bleeding. He was very crafty. Very. So her story is the same. So she said, without such dramatic evidence, why would a doctor believe me? Oh, gosh. Let me tell y'all something. Domestic violence is more than a trip. It's more than a trip. These dudes, these women who also abuse, have figured out how to play the game. I'm not gonna bust her up, because if I do, the cops come, she's bruised or he's bruised, and they're gonna haul me off to jail. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna play with her mind real bad. I'm gonna make her crazy, for real crazy. I'm gonna drive her to places mentally, emotionally, and psychologically that she can never return from, because she loves me and she trusts me. Because I got her love me and trust me, I got her in a place where I can do that to her. All right. Page 24. She said, every day feels like walking across a minefield. I'm always trying to figure out where to step and what to do because that thing's going to blow if I step in the wrong spot. Absolutely. She is telling the truth, 100% facts. Page 24. She said the psychiatrist that she went to said, this, this, this pisses me off. This is the problem I had with people who don't get domestic violence. I need all of y'all. If you are in the medical field and you talk to people or couples counselor or whatever you want to call it, I'm going to need you to go get some real training. She said the psychiatrist told her that she was morally obligated to stay in the marriage. So in fact, a doctor told her that she should continue to be abused, but we're going to come back to that. He lectured her about her own contributions to the marital fight. So, now I've got not only my husband at the time, her husband at the telling her that she's crazy and it's her fault. But now you've got someone who's a professional, a degreed professional, telling her about her contributions to marital fights. So you know what that made her do? And she says in the book, so she tried even harder to be the perfect one. You know what that is? That is domestic violence victims taking on the responsibility of the abuse that they did not create. Taking on the responsibility of the abuse that they did not cause or create is a part of how victimization and the cycle of abuse continues. And then on top of that, she had a psychiatrist. I'm going to need people to shut up when they don't know what they're talking about. It drives me up a wall. When you don't know, shut your daggone mouth. Go study the cycle of abuse before you go telling people and telling them the wrong things, which makes them stay and continue to be abused. I'm going to keep going. She said, I didn't leave, here's another one, because I grew accustomed to living a lie. She said she never even in her rabbi. She said, I had been raised and still, I told y'all that, to still believe that Jewish men weren't beaters. They didn't beat their wives. That her husband was the exception. So here she is. Not only she had nowhere to go for support, she had nowhere to, she said, I grew accustomed to living a lie. Was the life because somebody said this to me, and so I've got to fix it. It's going to take time to fix it, so I got to stay in this thing and do it. So I grew accustomed to this lifestyle. Oh, no, thank you. But I've been there, done that. So page 20, here's an important topic I got to bring up. This was in relation to the O.J. Simpson, Nicole Simpson trial. Y'all remember that? Big story. Y'all remember the whole trial. Gosh, so much. But the author, Dr. Weiss, recalls that she actually overheard. She overheard another woman say this. Why don't these women just leave? She should have walked out the minute he raised her hand to her. Got it. Like I got it. Like I know what you're saying and why you're saying it, but it's never that simple. So I'm gonna keep going. So Dr. Weiss points out the use of this woman's phrase, she should have. She should have walked out. She should have, okay? So when people hear, this is Dr. Weiss is really important point, and I agree with her. When people hear that a woman is being abused, when they hear that a woman is being abused, they say, she should, da, 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 whatever the rest of the phrase is. Well, she should this and she should that. They never say he should. Or if it's a man being abused, they don't flip it and say, she should stop doing this. They say he should walk away. He should just leave. It is amazing to me. And it drives me so batty, like why people can't get it. And maybe it's because not their experience, so they don't get it. Anyway, well, I learned after getting a protection order against my ex-husband. Here's a part of my story. I learned after getting a protection order against my husband and the ex-husband, the sheriffs removed him from my home and all that. I learned that one of his family members basically said that when I was in it, said, if it's so bad, then why does she just leave? So they were referring to when I was still in it. If it's that bad, why don't she just leave? All right, y'all. So y'all know okay, I'm gonna go here. So all I could think was, oh my God, really? Like, really? Is that what you got to say? And I just paused and I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't. Okay, so let's start with, that was my damn house. Let's start with that. That was my house. So how about, since that was my house that I let him move in, why don't he just leave? As a matter of fact, I got a better idea. Why don't you just come get him? Why don't you just come get him? How about that? Okay. Third, all of them knew exactly, this is my story now, All of them knew exactly who he was. They all knew. And also what he did in the past to other women and his other wives, but didn't say one word to me. But I'm supposed to leave? Yeah. I like how all the responsibility for that mess that was going on, all the responsibility is on me as the victim, as the person who didn't know, but y'all all knew. Okay, let's keep it moving. All right, so keeping the cycle of abuse swept under the rug. It happened in all these stories. It happened in my story. That's what they do. They keep it under the rug. But you know, I don't understand the pouring of the responsibility and the pouring of the weight and all that onto the victim to fix it all and do it all. It drives me crazy. Nah, nah, no can do. I am no longer attending the party, the one that's like, tell the victim to do it all. Nah, we're not doing that because it's not right. It's not fair. Not fair. It certainly isn't her fault, and it wasn't mine. All right. Page 30 and 31, a very interesting concept comes out of this one. I'm getting close to the end, but I got an important story because one of these four women has an amazing story that I want to make sure I put out there. But I'm going to say one more thing before I get to her story. Good values. The author talks about this. She said, good values get twisted in an abusive relationship. Good values, your good values, my good values got twisted in an abusive relationship. She talks about her specific value of loyalty, and she asks us to consider the value of loyalty. Her counselor, get this, her counselor insisted, this is now back to the author, that her husband could not function without her. Oh gosh. The things that people say, these professionals, like, I just can't. The vow she took, you know, we all take, for richer, for poorer, for better, for worse, till death do us part. I just want to stop for a moment and to say to everyone, please hear me. When we say that part, the for richer, for poorer, or the for better, for worse, that the for worse part, the for worse part. For worse is a reference to the hard times that you two may stumble upon, okay? You may stumble upon or find yourselves in together as husband and wife. For worse is not a reference to let this abuse keep happening. And I'm talking to all the counselors, therapists, whoever y'all all are out there, please stop this. Please stop making women, men who come to you and say, she's hurting me, she's hurting me. Would you please stop telling them to stay in abusive relationships? Stop telling them to let yourselves be hurt, that they are obligated in some moral way to be abused. I promise you, God did not intend. God did not intend for a husband to abuse a wife or a wife to abuse a husband. Please stop that. It is helping to keep the cycle of abuse continue. Marriage counseling, couples counseling does not fix abuse. Why? Because abuse is not a marriage counseling or a couples counseling issue. It is the issue of the abuser. Someone who is making a deliberate, willful, WILLFUL, willful choice to abuse. Please hear me. Okay. So the author admits that her strong sense of loyalty kept her in her marriage. I know it did for me too. Also, as a Christian woman, you believe in praying, you believe in fasting, all those. But I gotta tell y'all, the reality is some things are meant for God to fix. I could not fix my ex-husband, and I certainly didn't need to try. I wish I understood that sooner and earlier on. It wasn't about me joining to fix the marriage because that wasn't the root cause of the problem. It wasn't communication. That wasn't the root cause of the problem. The root cause of the problem was he was an abuser. Period. Repeated abuser. Period. So this wasn't about couples counseling, marriage counseling, or me demonstrating my loyalty to my marriage or my husband. It had nothing to do with my faith. Nothing to do with my faith, not mine. So I just want to say these things because people get lost about what's really going on. I'm getting awareness. I'm going to break down facades and I'm going to build conquerors. Bring awareness, break down facades, and build conquerors, because that's a part of what needs to happen to help stop domestic violence at the rates that it's going, and to help stop the cycle of abuse. That's what I'm here for. All right, last thing, Judy North, very important. I got to talk about her just for a second. In this book, Judy North is a first grade teacher. She was abused by her husband for 10 years. I mentioned this earlier, until she stood up to him in a fight that landed her in the emergency room. Remember this? Let me tell you what's going on. This one, I'm actually going to grab the book for, because there's some crazy points in here about this. Judy, the book tells us that Judy North did not see her dad being mean to her mom or vice versa. There was no abuse in the house that she was in. So she says, her quote, "When this all happened to me, I just didn't know what to think. I was really taken aback." These are her words. So I'm going to go straight to the book right now. And there's a couple of passages in here that are just killer passages. So I want them to you. She talked about the abuse she faced and the things that she witnessed. And she said, Carl, now I'm not sure if this is real name. I'm not even sure her real name is Judy North, to be honest, but that doesn't matter. The point is, her story is what matters, right? We talked about the importance of stories and sharing stories. It says Carl was working diligently to drive a wedge between Judy, the survivor, and her parents. God, that was my story. Ooh, did my ex-husband work hard to drive a wedge between me and my mom? Didn't work. What I tell you about the word almost doesn't count. Didn't do it. Judy and her parents. This is what he do. She says he criticized things they did, and he'd be sure to pick things that bothered me about them too. So whatever she had shared, he would bring it up in his mind. Listen to me. Calculation. That's why I don't sympathize. Calculated actions of abuse, power, and control. Okay. She said he criticized things they did, and he'd be sure to pick things that bothered me about them. So then I think, yeah, he's right. Right? It's amazing. It's such a game. Gosh. And she said, then she started to be mad at them. Oh my gosh. She said she didn't realize, listen, she didn't realize that the tensions between them, meaning her and her parents, were engineered. That's what abuse is. It is calculated. It is surgical. It is engineered. It's not a mistake or an accident or happenstance. It is planned. It is a cycle of abuse driven by power and control, period. Okay. All right. Just want to touch that. So at one point, this dude actually swung on Judy's father. It's unbelievable what these abusers do. So finally, she talks about Carl raising her hand to her dad, and how it got really, really bad in the house. It was just unbelievable between her and her family, and how he was able to drive a wedge between them. So here's the thing. There's another key point here. She talks about how other people, again, she was a teacher. Remember, this person's a teacher. And she talks about how at some point the other people she worked with began to see what was going on. She said the other teachers had often witnessed Carl bringing Judy to work, yelling insults out of the car window at her hunched back as she scurried into the building. So she had become, the shame had taken over her to the point where she was kind of walking in this, shameful position. They had suspicions, but they discreetly said nothing. She said, and see, I thought I was hiding it really well, but I wasn't. It was like I was living in another world. Now those had collided. This is where I connect with this particular person in the book, because my worlds collided. I was hiding. I told y'all I worked for Daimler, and I was making my way, and I was doing my thing, and I was climbing the ladder, and I thought they were supporting me, when in fact he was watching so that he could figure out how to dismantle everything I had built. Oh my gosh, just the thought of someone being that conniving just drives me crazy. And so he systematically tried to destroy what I had going on at work. It was bad. But I got to a point where I was coming to work, and I was like, okay, I had a bad morning. He wouldn't even let me out the house. He took my car keys. I got them back. He tried to hide my car, all kinds of stuff he was doing before I went to work, starting arguments, starting fights. But I'll go to work, might get there late, my face, make sure I was, get out the car, go in there and be like, good morning. Hey, everybody. I was doing that. I was doing that for a long time. in the meeting, running the meeting, running the project, doing my thing, making it happen. But there was a point when it was so intense. It was too hard. I was struggling so bad that my two worlds collided. My personal life and my professional life, I could no longer keep them apart. It was becoming obvious what was going on with me. Oh my gosh. So she talks about that in this book. And that's what happened to her. All right. So then she talks about a point in time where they went to see a therapist. Oh my gosh. She went to see a therapist, her specifically. And she talks about how she spent an hour in his office. He had basically told her that she needed to basically become more assertive. This is how you handle him. The next time he says this, you do that. Are y'all listening to me? Oh my God. I need people who are calling themselves therapists, counselors, psychiatrists. I need y'all to shut up unless you study. She said, we spent an hour in his office rehearsing what I'd say to Carl if he said something back to me. He had her shouting and screaming and even hitting a pillow, practicing how she's going to respond to her husband if he did this again. So when it happened, she said, if you ever call me out my name again, she says all these words, I won't repeat them because some of them are very harsh. If you ever call me this, that, this, or that ever again, here's what I'm going to do to you. And so she like punches the pillow. I guess she's trying to show him what she's going to do. She said the next bit is a bit, the next part is blank because she doesn't remember. What happened was she said her mom had to tell her what happened. Essentially, this man punched her so hard in her jaw, his knuckles to her jaw, sent her in front of her family. Are y'all listening to me? In front of her family, her parents, sent her so far across the room that her head, it hit the corner of the windowsill. She followed the advice of a professional. Her head hit a corner of a windowsill, knocked her out cold. She had a concussion. Her jaw was dislocated. She had a neck brace she had to wear for weeks. Oh my gosh. At some point, her father asked a sheriff if his daughter should file criminal charges, if Judy should file criminal charges. And he said, this was said, well, yes, the sheriff said reluctantly, but if Judy were his own daughter, he wouldn't be all that eager to press charges. Let me tell you why. Because Carl could lose his job. Because Carl could lose his job, which meant that Judy and her children would lose their breadwinner. Okay. So let me understand. Not only did she have a professional tell her to go and act a fool and stand up and say all these things to this guy, which eventually ended up in the emergency room with a broken jaw and a concussion. Okay. But also now you got the police saying, well, I don't think you should press charge because you know he's gonna lose his job. You need his money, girl. Stay because you need his money. Just keep on letting this happen. All right. It's amazing. It's amazing. I have been through so much stuff to the police. I called the police many times on my ex-husband. Many times they came to our house. He was very successful and very crafty with acting like, yeah, we having problems, but I ain't do this and I ain't do that and I ain't do that. It ain't like this or that. It's not. It's not that bad. Oh, wait a minute. No, but this or she did that or this Drano over here that I threw. No, that was an accident. It got on everything. I ain't just throw it on her. No, I wasn't that. Lying. Terrible. And the police said, well, he is your husband, right? Well, the stuff that's here is technically 50% his. And so since it didn't get on you, there's nothing criminal and he hasn't done anything criminal yet. That's what I was told. Drano, y'all. Y'all know what Drano is? Y'all know what it is. It is a chemical. It burns. It's a bleach. It's designed to break down things. That's the whole purpose of it. But yet, he hadn't done anything criminal yet. All right, we're going to keep going. A couple more things I want to say that Judy said because she's just phenomenal. When she reflected on it, she said she believes one of the reasons she didn't realize or she didn't leave is because she didn't realize he was an abuser. Difficult, yes. Nasty, yes. He had a mean streak, yes, is what she would say to herself. He was insulting, but she never thought to label herself as a victim of domestic violence. This is why I'm here every week, y'all. Because my goal, my hope is that if I give you the definitions, if I make it plain, if I make it clear, if I give you examples even from my own story, if I just make myself very transparent, Can do that, then I can help you see that these little things, it isn't just the punch. It isn't that stuff. It's all the psychological manipulations. It's the creation of an argument. It's the division that they bring to from between you and your family. They are driving between you and your family so that you isolate it, so that they can isolate you enough to abuse you and do exactly what they want to do with you. It is all about power and control. Do not be misled in any way, shape, or form. That's what it's about. It is calculated. It is a choice. Abuse is a choice. Don't be confused. And don't think it's just a black eye. Don't think it's just a bloody nose or a busted lip. That is certainly a part of it, but it never starts that way. It doesn't start that way. It's all psychological, mental manipulation, financial things, all kinds of stuff happens. And then eventually that physical comes, but it's typically not the way it starts. Pay attention to the flags, the yellow, the red, what I call pink, because they're somewhere in the middle. Pay attention. If they throw things, break things, all of that kind of stuff is abuse. I promise you, you want to stay. You want to not invest in a relationship with someone who behaves. I tell people all the time, any kind of physical violence, I don't care if it's to the pet or to the radio, to the television, or if it's to you, any kind of physical violence is acceptable, period. I don't care what it was. I don't care what it was. It is abuse. And you've got to get out of it and you've got to stay away from it. Because I can tell you right now, that train that you're on, it only leads to one place. It leads to one place. It's on one track. That track is full-fledged murder. Abuse leads to murder. Some of these guys, women, are killing their victims. You don't want to be there. Get off the train. These women survived. They survived domestic violence. They are women who broke free. Again, they didn't just leave. Leaving is what you do when the movie comes to an end at the movie theater. They escaped. They survived. I escaped. I survived. And that alone is powerful. If you are listening, if you are watching, and this is hitting you somewhere deep, listen, I know because it hits me deep every single time. Every time I talk about it, it hits me deep because it's my story. It was my life, and I found my way of it. And when I talk, sometimes I know that it hits people a certain way, hits me a certain way. So I'm going to take this time, it's 8:07. I'm going to take this time to bring it to a close. But I want to bring you raw truth because that's what we need. That's what we need to this nasty, dark, demonic monster called domestic violence. It's abuse. It's calculated. It's on purpose. It is disgusting. It is affecting and breaking down families all over this world. But yet people want you to shh. They want you to be quiet about it. Not me. This podcast is called Silent No More. I won't be silent because it's terrible. And there are too many people paying for it. And some women, some men are paying for it with their lives. Here to do a job. Bring awareness. Break down facades. Build conquerors. And I'm going to do it every single week. And for this month, I'm going to use this book to help me to bring out the points that need to be brought out. I thank y'all for listening, but let me pour real quick to you. Thank you for listening and thank you for sharing. I'm going to pour back into you right now. First of all, it was never your fault. If you are a victim or survivor of domestic violence, it was never your fault. Never. Never. You didn't say, hey, listen, I want to get into a relationship with an abuser. All abusers, please raise your hands. Yes, please come this way to me. I need that. No, that's not how it happens. They take you through a process and they get you a place where you trust and love. And then, boom, it changes on purpose. You were never to blame. You define you. You were never to blame. You define you. It was never, ever your fault. But I tell you what, you can escape. You can get out. You can survive. And not only survive, but you can thrive. I am living proof. And I pray that my example gives you some sort of additional courage, some sort of strength, and some kind of hope if you are living in it now. I am so grateful for you guys listening. I'm so grateful for you watching. Again, this is an hour of your time you could be using however else you would have wanted to. I appreciate your life. If you are a survivor or a victim, listen, I'm here. I am the founder of Ladder Masters. Ladder Masters is on Facebook, Ladder Masters on LinkedIn, Ladder Masters even on IG. Ladder Masters is on YouTube. All of these videos, all of them I place on YouTube in a row so you can just go back and watch them and get what you need. If you need to talk, 855 We Survive. Say that again. 8855 We Survive is my toll-free number. Dial it. 855 We Survive. Dial it. I'm telling you, I am here. I am listening. I am ready. There are victims I talk to right now. I'm trying to help get out of their situations because it's that important that you do. It's that important that you do. But I always say, no matter what, you have to do it safely. People say she needs to leave. You need to help her do it safely. Where are you to help her do it safely? Where are you to help him do it safely? I've got some resources. I do. 855 We Survive. You want the actual number? 855 937 8784. 855 937 8784. Please do reach out. Check out the website for information. Check out my Facebook page for information, LinkedIn, whatever you need. I'm here. I want to help. I want to help. I, I appreciate you and I appreciate your life. I'm going to sign off right now. We will pick up next week with section number 2 of this book. Thank you, Dr. Elaine Weiss, for you writing this because it is powerful. Thank you for gathering and collecting those stories and sharing them with us. You are a blessing. All right, good night, everybody. I appreciate y'all. See y'all next week.